I'm Chad Harrington with Him Publications, and I'm interviewing Bobby Harrington, my dad, and he is the CEO of discipleship.org and renew.org. Not to mention, he's also the lead pastor at Harpeth Christian Church. And we are talking about Brandon Guindon's book, Stay the Course, which is about helping disciple-making groups learn the 7 essential practices that make a disciple-making church. This is a discipleship.org resource that they published through Him Publications. In fact, this was our first partnership book back in 2017, November of 2017. I remember that because I was pretty excited. The very first book that Him Publications published. So, but I want to talk to you, Dad, because you helped commission this book and you wanted to get behind it with discipleship.org. So give us the main message of this book, the 3 big takeaways, and how groups can use this, starting with the main message of the book.
So the main message of the book is that if you will commit to 7 practices or 7 guardrails, then you'll help people to stay the course and be disciples who make disciples, and you'll lead a church focused on the key elements among the leaders of helping people to be disciples and make disciples.
What are your 3 biggest takeaways of Stay the Course?
You know, Chad, the first takeaway, and I would commend to all of those who are watching or listening to us, is that these 7 practices, if the leaders of a church will adopt them, really create a great cultural environment of prioritizing the things that church leaders need to prioritize. So number 1, how do you keep your leaders of the church focused on the right things? The second thing is that stands out, and I want to draw everyone's attention, is the first practice of Stay the Course is to abide in Christ. And I've just got to say, I'm so pleased that that's one of the 7 practices, because a lot of churches don't slow down and make sure that their staff and leaders are personally abiding in Christ, because we are going to minister out of the overflow of our being. And the first most essential thing is that we want to be genuine disciples. The third thing that I would recommend to everyone is that these are practices that in your best self you would want to do, but with the discipline of using these 7 practices, being conscious of them as a staff, coming back to them, you end up doing what you really want to do, but you need practices and disciplines to help you do them.
How would you recommend group leaders or churches use this book? Does it work for all groups, or what kind of groups would you recommend?
So first, I just want to say that the goal of making disciples means that everybody in leadership positions in the church need to be aware of the key concepts and the key practices. So I'm going to want all of my leaders, all of my staff to really be aware of these principles. And as I have done at our church, Harpeth Christian Church, all of our staff work through this book. We like them to come back to it every couple of years, and hopefully we're embedding these 7 practices. Since I haven't mentioned them, let me mention all 7, Chad. The first is to abide in Christ, that to have your staff and your key leaders always asking, how are we doing abiding in Christ?
Like when you say key leaders, I just want to clarify, do you mean lay leaders as well, not just staff and not just elders? But
well, it's going to, first of all, I think that these practices are practices for the leaders of the church. So if it's a smaller church, it would be lay leaders, would be small group leaders. If it's a church of like 50 to 75, you're going to want your key leaders working on these things. The bigger the church becomes, it'll be important that your elders and all the staff are working on these things, and that they have rhythms for the staff or for the elders of the church to be going through these. So I kind of see it as when the churches get organized, which they have to do when you're a church beyond the size of 150 people, then these practices are good practices to make a part of the rhythm of whatever staff or official leadership structure you have. So the first one is abide in Christ. The second one is reach the lost. The third one is connect the unconnected, which means people who are part of the church, but they're not in discipling relationships. Get them connected. The fourth one is chase the strays. In other words, the people who stop coming to church, who are losing the way, we chase after them. We reach out to them, not in a sense of negative accountability, but of, hey, we care about you, we love you, we haven't seen you, how are you doing? Number five, shepherding people towards spiritual maturity. In other words, being aware of when somebody's an infant, child, spiritual adult, and helping them to grow to the next phases. Number six is equip and release leaders, or equip and release disciple makers, to train up people so that they can make disciples, and then empower and release them to make disciples. And then number seven, function as a team, where it's a group of leaders with the same playbook, the same concepts, all trying to do the same thing. This is a great book. It's a short read, and I highly recommend it to all of those in church leadership who desire to be a part of a disciple-making church.
We're talking about Stay the Course by Brandon Guindon. For all the details you need to make a decision about using this book with your leaders or your group at your church, check out the Hymn Publications blog. We're going to put a link in the description of this video. And in that blog, you're going to get vital information, a theology screening, as well as housekeeping questions like, does it have discussion questions, and a video series with it. Until next time, thank you, and we'll see you soon.